Welcome, Freddie Cocker. Uh, really good to see you. It's been a while. Um, you had me onto your brilliant show, podcast, and well, Vent. It's called Vent, and it does plenty of different things as well. And would you be up for just introducing yourself? And we'll get to what Vent does, but how are you doing? I haven't seen you for ages, and we had a really long, very deep chat because your approach to podcasting is very thorough, and I really appreciated that. So this one's going to be a bit more fluid. Um, but yeah, I'd love to know how you're doing.
Yeah, mate. Thanks very much for having me. It's great to be on. I normally joke to people that the only podcasts I get invited on are guests who already have podcasts and they invite me onto theirs. So yeah, it's good to see you. Yeah, I'm good, thank you. 2023, full disclosure, was quite a difficult year for me for many reasons. I tried to take some positives out of it. So 2024 is starting a bit better for me, positives wise. I'm in a support group at the moment for an issue that I'm sure we'll get to later in the podcast, which is going well. This week has been a bit of not a difficult one, but been having a bit of sleep issues recently. Trying to make some changes to improve my sleep routine. I think it's related to possibly autistic traits, which I'm in the process of trying to get screened for. But yeah, other than that, all good, mate.
Okay, sounds like a lot going on, and yeah, an intense year last year. I mean, yeah, you seemed like very busy when I spoke to you, whenever it was, late last year sometime.
I'm always busy, mate. Always
You're
trying to be
intense.
busy.
So, but okay, but wh- what do I want to ask you? I want to ask you about events, but first, uh, you're I'm really blown away by what you're doing actually, because I was just looking at the
Oh,
website,
thank you, mate.
the event website,
Mm.
and you're bringing an incredible amount of energy and focus to build you've already built it, but you're running this platform that's designed to uh, facilitate conversations about mental health and prevent people from killing themselves ultimately
That's the aim, mate.
where possible,
Mm.
which is a topic close to my heart. Um, and you it's not your job. You
No.
have another job.
Yeah, this is
So
my
I'm
side
not that.
hustle.
Yeah, exactly. But it's like looks really professional, and you do a good job of it. So
Thank you, mate.
yeah, I just feel I want to express my gratitude and admiration for you're doing this work just as a gift, and uh, so I really respect that. And the mission event is particularly focused at facilitating conversations to support and enable men and boys to like get in touch with their feelings, get support, um,
Yeah,
find a
I
way
would.
through.
Yeah, I would say it's predominant. It's predominantly to help men and boys, but I like to say everyone, but especially men and boys. I had some people at the very, very beginning were saying, "Oh, it's just for men, or is it only men?" And I was getting a bit annoyed by that, so I had to add the caveat in. But there we go. Yeah, but it's a place to help everyone, but especially men and boys, open up about their mental health issues if they want to, or are needed, or would be helped by it. Break down stigmas and start conversations. That's the overall mission, and my kind of overall objective and goal event is to provide a space where men can come if they want to, free of judgment, free of reprisal, free of negative backlash from me, and hopefully from that point onwards get support if they need to, take ownership and responsibility of their mental health, and lead a happy and prosperous life from that point onwards. I say to guests, you could be at the start of your journey when you come to me, you could be at the middle, you could be towards the end. Um,
Mm.
So yeah, I like to try and facilitate that. I always say to my guests, good things always happen to my podcast guests after they come on, which I like to think is some sort of positive manifestation and legacy. And yeah, I've started it in September 2017, so it'll be 7 years in September this year.
Mm.
And the podcast, the Just Checking In podcast, which you came on, Zach, and were a brilliant guest on. That's been going since April 2019. So that'll be 5 years and a couple of months' time. And then outside of that, I've got the music night called Just Checking In Live, which I do twice a year, which is a kind of bit of a thank you to my community and it's a gig and a DJ club night, and it's a way for me to raise a little bit of money, not a huge amount, just a bit of money to invest in some things which will help Vent and means I don't have to always pay money out of my paycheck to support it.
Mm. And so, y- what kind of impact do you think Vents had in those 7 years? I mean, you've got, you do a lot of podcasts. You do
Yeah,
two a week, don't you?
307, I think, at the moment in 5 years.
Yeah. How do you do that? And you work in PR as well, right?
Yeah, yeah. I've
Yeah.
worked in comms and PR for coming up to 9 years. So that's my full-time career.
Yeah. And you're in London.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Born and raised in East London. So
Nice.
my sisters and my brother all live around me with their kids or partners. So yeah, it's nice to be close by to everyone. I've got three siblings as well, so it's always nice to see them. And some people go, I've got to go back home to X place, and it's kind of like a quite a long thing for them to do. Whereas I can go see my nephews pretty easily and go see my parents every weekend when I can. So yeah.
Mm. And what do you do in the world of PR?
So at the moment I work for a finance organization. So I've worked there for almost it'll be 2 years in August.
Mm.
But I've been all over the gap. I used before that I was in the NHS in a place called Barts Health. So I worked there for for 18 months I joined in the second COVID wave, the height of it. So I was very proud of all the work that I did there, a lot of media work around getting TV cameras and like loads of different media bids. I did loads and loads of work about seeing the hospitals and rolling out the vaccine stuff. I didn't lead on the vaccine comms, but I did a lot of work around that too. And that really kind of, I guess, reignited my love for comms. I'd worked at the BBC for about 18 months prior to that, and I had some amazing times at the BBC, but I also had some pretty difficult times. I respect a lot of people who still work there, so I won't chuck them under the bus that much. I try not to in any interview I do. But yeah, that became quite difficult for me by the end. So I wanted to leave that, and
Mm.
yeah, that the NHS job really reignited my love for comms, and I love writing and I love interacting with people, and yeah, I really enjoy my full time career. Obviously, any long term goal I'd want to maybe do Vent full time, but there's no money in mental health, as I often joke.
Well, there's loads of money in the well-being space.
Oh yeah,
There's
but
loads of money in the coaching and the
yeah, that's
lifestyle.
that's not really for me. That I mean, whoever does
No.
it, fair play to them. I'm not as much into that element. I think a lot
You
of
go,
well being.
you go, sorry to
So
interrupt,
go
go
on, mate.
on. You go for the real gritty stuff. I mean, I remember
Yeah.
in our conversation, you asked me a lot of questions, which I was great. But yeah, I was like, wow, this is edgy. I
Mm.
like it.
Well, I always well I'll take that as a compliment, I think. But
That's how it's meant. Yeah,
oh, thank you, man.
I like it.
I always one of my kind of taglines that I say whenever I do interviews is that my podcast has the uncomfortable conversations about mental health and specifically mental illness that most other podcasts either choose not to have or refuse to.
Yeah, exactly.
I get really pissed off with a lot of mental health podcasts actually. And it's why I think I do some of the best work, to be honest, without tooting my own horn too much. Because a lot of mental health podcasts we'll talk a lot about well-being, as you said. It'll be a lot of fluffy crap. It'll be a lot of general stuff that you can learn through a couple of episodes, really.
Mm.
And they refuse to cover issues which, in my opinion, they're choosing not to do. So I don't really like ranking. issues that are more stigmatized. And I don't really want to get into like a victimhood or
Mm.
hierarchy Olympic sort of thing, but issues for men, like men who've got eating disorders, men who've been sexually abused by male or female perpetrators, um, men who have detransitioned, men who have been domestically abused by women, all of these issues that most people refuse to talk about or address or give a platform to men who've gone through
Mm.
them. And that's discounting other issues like involuntary childlessness, which is a really, really stigmatized issue, especially in men, also women. I've had some amazing women on the
Yeah, yeah,
podcast. I
yeah.
try and do a lot for them. So yeah, those are the issues I try and cover, man. Doesn't make me the most popular person outside of my
You don't give a
my
fuck. It's
community, but I
great.
don't give a fuck. So
I love that. But I mean, you sent me a few to listen to before we did ours, and I listened to a couple, and I thought they were excellent.
thank you, man.
So I really encourage anyone watching this to check it out. The Just Checking In podcast, some
Yeah.
really good stuff. And yeah, I like it because you're not afraid to talk about the politics about things, and I think in the mental health space, in the as a counselor and a psychotherapist, this has been troubling me
Mm,
for a while. This idea um, that I'm supposed to be woke, uh, and there's quite a bit of sort of pressure really from the institutions and the organizations that the memberships. As a counselor, you've got the UKCP, the BACP, and various other ones, and I'm a member of the BACP. And as such, I've got a responsibility to protect the reputation of the profession, but I
hmm
also think I've got a responsibility to make sure it's kosher as well. Ask decent questions about what are the values that therapists are bringing.
hmm
Um, is a therapeutic space uh, an appropriate place to kind of push ideological positions? Uh, and yeah, I'm going off on a bit of a tangent here, but I just wondered what your
No, you got to be
experience
true
was.
to yourself. Yeah, you got to be true to yourself as
Yeah,
well.
because I think this is coming from just looking at your website again just
Hmm
now. It's like you've just gone, and we'll get into this maybe a
hmm
bit later, but you've at some point you've just decided I'm just going to do something, and I'm good at organizing stuff and making a platform, so I'll just do that. And so you've come at it just from a really pure uh, practical
hmm
position, and it's not really filtered, and I like that.
Probably an autistic trait of mine, being
It's just
unfiltered.
it's human, and it's
Mm,
not, but I know a lot of therapists who are quite frightened of speaking their mind in training or in
mm.
supervision or whatever, because they might get blacklisted for saying the wrong thing. And what you were just saying
Oh,
earlier,
that
if you
ship sailed for me, bro.
yeah, right, you're you're gone.
Yeah, that ship
But
sailed years
you're
ago.
not beholden to anyone, so
No,
you
I try
can.
not. Yeah, I don't at the moment take any corporate sponsors, and if I did, I'd be very specific and particular about them. I think a
Mm,
lot of them are pretty soulless, and a lot of them are quite problematic, to be honest. And yeah, I do appreciate that, man. I definitely took some risks when I interviewed certain guests, but I thought like I have to be politically impartial in my job, and I do tread a fine line. And I have to be very. I've had to be politically impartial in the last like three jobs I've done. So I was in the BBC, then in the NHS, and now I'm in this one, which I'm kind of like technically a civil servant, but not like in the civil service, so to speak. So I do have to be careful with that. But I really pride myself in interviewing people from not just really stigmatized issues, but all different walks of life and political backgrounds. So I've interviewed people like Ben Sixsmith, who's a great conservative writer. I've interviewed quite left wing writers. and just all people on different parts of the political spectrum. And I've really enjoyed that. And
Mm.
it's really, the event has changed my life in many ways. And so has the podcast, and exposed me to so many different issues. And, one of the first episodes that really I kind of describe as red pilling me, so to speak. And I try not to use the word woke too much because I feel like it becomes a pejorative in certain respects. But I
Yeah, fair
definitely was
point.
more
Yeah.
I definitely was more afraid of touching certain subjects, maybe right at the start. But then I interviewed a man called William Costello, who's gone on to
Oh
massively major,
yeah.
major big things. I say to him, Will, I gave you your big start in the podcast world, but we have a lot of banter
Why?
about it.
What's he doing now? Because
Oh,
I
he's
saw
done
him at a conference.
trigonometry. He's
Oh, has
done
he?
like Chris Williamson. He's done loads of
Holy
loads
shit!
of big shit, man. Yeah, I interviewed him like maybe 3.5 years ago now, because he wrote an article about incels that I came across on Twitter, and I was really interested by it, and I was like, I really want to kind of get you on, mate, to talk about it. And
Mm.
maybe I had a preconceived idea of what incels or who incels were. And, he was telling me like, the vast majority are peaceful and non-violent. They're not all kind of like these white nationalist kind of stereotypes. Quite a lot of them are from, Asian backgrounds or black backgrounds or whatever. So that picture's definitely not black and white, literally and metaphorically. And also a lot of them have, special educational needs or disability. Some of them have been sexually abused. There's quite high prominence of autism and stuff like that. So yes, a lot of them may have misogynistic views, but I was kind of more about how do we help them ascend? How do we help them find purpose and direction in life? And that's where
Mm.
kind of my recent, I guess, direction for the podcast has been, in how I advocate to help men. I hate the word advocate, but anyway,
Yeah.
it's the
He
best word I can come up
identified
with.
a sort of an oncoming just crisis in mating, didn't he?
Yeah, yeah.
That's what I remember from his presentation.
Yeah,
Can't remember exactly
100%.
what it was. It was like a huge proportion of women from age 25 to 40 were going to
Single and childless, yeah.
single and childless.
And
What
James
was the
Bloodworth talks
proportion?
about this as well. He's talked about kind of quite a significant proportion of men are sexless between the ages of 2019 to 38 or something like that. And yeah, I always kind of joke that social media has fucked up Gen Z, and dating apps have fucked up my generation. I think that's largely. I mean, it's a joke, but it's kind of I think fairly accurate in regards to how it's played out in
Mm.
social consequences. So I think a lot of especially the argument that James and Will talk about is like a lot of men don't go out, and I'm probably in that category. Like, as in, I don't go out that much because a lot of my mates don't go out that much. I'm very extroverted. I go to a lot of things on my own now because I've been going to gigs on my own for the last 5 years.
Yeah, I like
Um,
doing that. It's nice.
but yeah, we're just not going out as much. I did a piece with James when he did a Channel 4 short film about COVID, and like how people were talking about the roaring 20s and all this like post-COVID stuff. And I was like, at the time I said to him, like, I don't think this is gonna happen. I think this is all fluff. And it's that I was actually correct, but I was almost not correct enough, because like it's just been such a decline, I think, in people going out. And you've got things that haven't helped, like cost of living crisis, inflation, war in Ukraine, fuel prices, all these stuff which have kind of snowballed. So yeah, I just try and make the most of what I can do in my life, and try and be active. And I don't have much of a life outside of podcast gigs and work. So there you go.
Do you play music?
No, I think we'll probably get to this. I do think, looking back, that I tried to play instruments, but I never got the hang of it. I think it was some sort of
Mm.
dyspraxic trait. But I've always had a really good ear. I've always, my mates will tell you that I like to think I'm a pretty good impressionist. I've got a good ear for accents. I've always been able to pick up people's voices quite quickly. And when it comes to music,
Ah,
it's just
so
something I'm obsessed with. So yeah, music of all different sorts. I'm a music nerd, I describe myself as. So
so you could be a singer.
I was a singer. I was in the choir when I was in primary school. And then my balls dropped, and then I realized that I couldn't sing as high notes anymore. I could probably get back to singing at a decent level if I took some singing lessons, but not at the moment.
Mm.
But I've always enjoyed music. Like, so singing was obviously a good outlet for me, I think, back then. Maybe not in the church. I didn't never really enjoyed that, despite all the solos I had to do.
Mm.
But yeah, music is my biggest passion, man. My iPod and my iTunes library are my most prized possessions, I would say. outside of my CD library.
So you're keeping yourself going with music and vent, and
Yeah.
you're working hard, and you're experiencing some tricky stuff with sleep and other stuff. And
Hmm.
you know, I'm aware that you had some troubles in early life, and
Hmm.
your vent didn't just come out of thin air. You got to a point where you had this incredible drive to do something. So do you want to share a little bit, as much as you feel to,
Yeah.
about what happened? Why did did you decide to do this
Yeah, sure.
work?
So I guess Vent came out of two main reasons. So the first one is, as I said earlier, I wanted to provide a space where men like me, and I've written about my own story through Vent and done podcasts and stuff, could have that space to express themselves free of reprisal and judgment, and a safe space. Safe space has become a bit of a bastardized term now, but yeah.
Mm.
And then the second reason, as I'll kind of go into, is my own lived experience of mental health issues. So I was bullied for 9 years in school across primary and secondary school. So primary school was like year three to year six. It was one main bully and then a couple of others who kind of maybe orchestrated the group, as well as him. So it was a very small primary school. I loved my primary school. I'd never say a bad word about it. Christian school in my local area, and it was a very small one. So out of the boys, out of the class, there was one class in every year, and there was only like 9 or 10, maybe 11 boys max in our class.
Mm.
So if you have one ringleader, then it's pretty easy to corral the rest at that age. I had quite a lot of low hanging fruit. I was a bit overweight, maybe a bit chubby when I was at that age. I had a funny surname. I had autistic traits, which meant that I was quite sensitive. I didn't really know how to probably handle that level of abuse. So it was largely social abuse, social ostracization, physical abuse, and then one incident of sexual abuse, sexual assault, which was a repressed memory for about 17 years. And then secondary school, I went from a very sheltered, small primary school to a very rough, massive state
I
comp.
remember this. You did a podcast on this, and it just
Yes.
sounded terrifying. It was
Yeah,
like,
yeah, different world
I was
from
like,
Cornwall and
what
Devon, eh?
the fuck?
Yeah, so my secondary school was a Christian school as well, state comp in Essex. It was like an hour from me, so I had to get like either two.
Massive as well, like
Massive school, yeah,
how big?
260, 270, I reckon, maybe
Yeah.
250 of people in my year. Sort of like a prison sort of environment, a lot of gang culture. I came from a middle class background. My dad's retired a law professional. My mum was very working class, but I had the middle class kind of upbringing, so to speak, with working class roots. And it was a sort of 60-40 white to black, I would say, predominantly makeup. So the black kids were kind of second generation African, like gone predominantly Ghanaian and Nigerian, and then the white kids were like very very working class, Romford, Thurrock, Grays, Basildon. This is like the mid noughties. There's quite a lot of racism in the school. Homophobia was pretty rampant. Islamophobia was pretty casual. Um,
I
so yeah,
just
yeah.
want to
Sorry,
jump
mate.
in and say that I'm not implying that black people or working class people are bad. But my impression was that it was a rough school,
Yeah,
and
I mean,
it was just
it
a
was a
rough
rough school,
school,
whatever
and
race
it
you
was
were,
a
mate.
big rough school. Yeah,
Yeah, it was a rough school, whatever race you were.
yeah.
So yeah, year 7 to year 9 was like three kids in my form class. And whoever tells you that bullies are the cowards and the small kids are lying to you. Bullies are the big kids. Bullies are the ones bully are the ones who are physically a lot bigger than you. So that was pretty hard to deal with. That was largely physical abuse. I would say kind of a couple beatings. I probably repressed some of them from memory, and then kind of like social abuse. And then year 9 to year 11 was like my social group. That was like daily or weekly, kind of like they would probably describe it as pranks or physical abuse disguised as that. There were
Right,
things.
yeah.
There
Like
was.
this is a joke, but
They
actually
think
it
it's a
didn't
joke, but
feel
I'm
like
actually
it.
getting
Yeah.
rushed at lunchtime every day for banter, and it's like, I don't really think that's.
Pylons. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, uh, yeah.
I remember seeing a lot of this stuff. Actually, listening to that podcast, I was thinking to myself, God, I actually did that to other kids. I did that kind of thing. Didn't think anything of it.
One
I would
one
have
offs
been
you can
like,
deal with though, bro. Like I was getting it
what's
every
that?
day. One offs you can deal with. I was getting it every day.
Yeah.
And like uh so yeah, social abuse as well. Just like, and because I was in such a victim mentality, there were kids in my social group that I could have easily probably stood up to and punched or whatever. I just couldn't. I just didn't or couldn't
Mm.
for whatever reason. Um, and then there was one incident of cyberbullying as well. So a guy in my year created a Facebook group about me whilst I was on holiday, came back. It was an embarrassing picture of me at like a 16th birthday party. He invited the whole year group to it. And everyone was just making like horrible comments on it. That was Facebook times. So that was like not on your phone. It was kind of like family
Get
computer
home,
with the
get
bas
home
with
and
the
see it.
yeah, the
Yeah.
washing machine basket next to you. Um, and I came close to taking my own life after that, actually. But prior to that, year nine, I tried to take my own life. It was kind of like I describe it as like a shit suicide attempt. What I thought was a drug overdose wasn't actually probably a drug overdose. Um, and
But
yeah,
you thought
between
it was.
yeah, I
You
thought
thought
it
it
was.
was.
Yeah, I fully thought the amount I was taking was enough.
Mm.
Um, and then yeah, if year 9 to 11 was pretty hard. Just like daily daily abuse, getting told everyone hates you. I was probably one of the most hated kids in the year. Getting told to kill myself on a weekly basis by people. And then I also got cyberbullied again by yeah, I was in an after school drama group. I'd actually found that drama group quite a big outlet for me. And then I joined the older group. I was in like it was like year 7 to 9. I was there for like a young group, and then you get the opportunity. You basically got the opportunity to join the older group a year early, and it was like 15-year-olds to 18-year-olds. So it was a lot of older kids, and
Mm.
they bullied me on Facebook as well. And then after that, I just stopped going, and it killed my love for drama for quite a few years actually, because I was the lead in a lot of my school plays up to that point. Um, and then obviously during that period as well, I was self-harming quite a lot. So nail biting was my main method. Used to bite quite horrifically. And
Mm.
then got to the end of year 11 and I left that school. So I kind of got out the hood, got my GCSEs, got my 5 A's and 3 B's that I needed. I went to a grammar school that was nearer me. So it only took me like half an hour to get to that. And that was an all boys school. 99% South Asian lads. So that was a massively different demographic. Uh,
99%.
yeah, I was one of 10 white boys in the year. So it was 99% South Asian. There was like 10 white boys, there was 3 black kids, and then there was like 9 Chinese kids, and everyone else was either Pakistani, Indian, or Bangladeshi. There was a couple of Bangladeshi kids actually. It was Pakistani, Indian, Sri Lankan, sorry. But I really enjoyed that. It was an academic environment which I
Mm.
loved. I always tell this story about I got an A in my AS English Lit and Lang course. I only dropped like 3 marks, so I basically got 100%. And everyone was like, "Fucking hell, Fred, you smashed that exam!" Rah, rah. And I was like, so like taken aback because I
That's
never had that
incredible.
before. Yeah, like my previous school, people got onto you, they call you a boffin and all this sort of stuff if you got A's or whatever.
I
So
remember that.
yeah, it was mad. Um,
Boffin.
so
Yeah.
that transition was great for me, and I had a great time in sixth form, despite the fact that I had severe acne and I had to go on Roaccutane to get rid of it on my face, and I went on it 10 years later to get rid of it on my spine. But that was a really good transition for me. It kind of helped me, I guess, refine my love for education. I had some really supportive teachers who loved me because I was enthusiastic and I actually answered questions in class. Um, and then uh, got to university and uh, loved university. Absolutely loved my time there. I'll try and condense this story because it's quite a lot to get in. I got through. It was first year, and I came home from a night out, and I started crying myself to sleep like I did when I was in year 9, 10, 11, like every week or whatever. And I was like, wow, this is not right here. Despite the fact I'd come hundreds and hundreds of times close to taking my own life, planned it out, practiced doing it, whatever. Back then, I still thought it was normal, or still felt it was something that every kid does, or it was only localized to me. And then I cried like massively after being completely drunk on this night out. And I was like, wow, actually, this is a thing. And I kind of describe it as putting a Mentos in a Coke bottle. I've suppressed all of this emotion to get myself through school to survive it, which I did. And I'm very proud of myself for doing that because I don't think a lot of people would have. if they'd gone through what I'd gone through. And then second year I was sort of self-harming in a different way. So I was overeating quite a lot. I was up to like I think I got up to worse. I was like 13 stone, but like no muscle, just pure belly. Just eating like 3 packets of crisps a day, hot cross buns, donuts in my room, just like so miserable. Um, and I was abusing a lot of substances, making a lot of bad decisions. Probably won't go into too much detail apart from that. People can guess what that was. And
Mm.
then got to the start of third year and I was quite suicidal. Walked past my medicine cabinet and thought about taking all the medicine in it. And that was as close I kind of came to, I guess, taking my own life. And the next day I was in a university seminar and I basically had a episode of psychosis. In the middle of the seminar was a mural on the wall that was I was hearing voices telling me to kill myself. I was maybe creating the voices myself. I'm not really too sure. That's the only time I've really ever heard voices like that. And I'd previously gone to the medical center at the university like the week before,
Mm.
saying I needed to see someone, but I felt too like ashamed, stigmatized to tell them I was suicidal. And I had a close friend in my social group, Tilly, who always is part of the story now. And I was texting her under the table saying like I thought about taking my life last night, da 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 da. And she took me back to the medical center and said, I'm not leaving until you tell them what's going on. And I said, I'm suicidal. And they'd previously said to me, can you come back in 8 months for an appointment? And I told them I was suicidal that day. And they said, well, we'll see you straight away. And I was seen, assessed, and then I did 6 weeks of CBT, or cognitive behavioral therapy.
Mm.
And from then, that was the start of the recovery journey, I guess. And fast forward, I've done 2 more rounds of CBT since then. I did 2 rounds of EMDR to initially tackle the sexual abuse, but I tackled loads of things within that too. And I'm in a support group now for men who have gone through sexual abuse and are survivors of sexual abuse. So I think that's basically the trauma and recovery story. And then the story of Vent, very very quickly to add, is that I was sitting with my best mate Hannah, who I've known for 27 years now. Um,
How old are you?
and I'm 29, so I'll be 30. We've known each other for 27 years in April when I turn 30.
Mm.
And I was applying to quite a lot of mental health charities, like in comms jobs, and I wasn't getting anywhere. I was getting to maybe second interview, and I wasn't getting anywhere. And I said, "Oh, Hannah, I wanted to start my own thing." And I had a bit of I had some experience in kind of website editing and setting up and copy editing and stuff like that. And I said, "Oh, whenever someone wants to have like a deep conversation with me or anything, they say I want to vent." And I was like, "Oh, if I start something, I want to call it that." But I said, "Oh, I don't know if it will help anyone. I don't know if it will reach anyone." She said, "Fred, if it helps one person, it's worth it." And that was my initial objective. So I set it up and I had the boyfriend of a very, very good friend of mine from university message me and say, I've wanted to have a platform and share my story for ages. I've never been able to find anything. Can I share my story on Vent? And I was like, absolutely. And Steve was, yeah, one of the first men to come on. And from there, it's grown and grown and grown. I started the podcast because I felt like I was doing interviews and some people aren't great writers or it's not suited for them. So I wanted to give another outlet. So I started that April 2019 and fast forward 7 years and I'm sitting here talking to you, Zach.
Mm.
It's a lot to take in though. So I do apologize.
No, good stuff. Yeah, so you turned your suffering into something meaningful at a very early on, relatively
Mm,
speaking.
yeah,
You're still young, but so you were
young-ish.
22, 21, 22.
I was 23 when I started Vent.
Right,
Yeah,
yeah.
and then the spark for starting Vent actually came after the near miss, one of the near miss suicide attempts, where I thought to myself, if I have nothing left to give, the only thing I'd want to do is to make sure no one ever feels like I am in this moment. That's how I felt in that moment.
Mm.
And that's where the spark for it came, and then it uh, crystallized, shall we say, 7 or 8 years later when I was 23.
Yeah, it's it's mysterious how these things just gestate and then manifest at the right time. But
Mm.
that's the wounded healer archetype.
Yeah, definitely.
It's nature doing its thing, isn't it?
Mm.
And
Yeah.
how's that experience for you been then since starting it and up to where you are now? What's that felt like for you? Because I
Life
know that
changing, mate.
you've still got your challenges,
Mm-hmm.
but
Yeah.
life's kind of got, I guess it's got richer and
Yeah.
broader and deeper at the same time.
Oh yeah, mate. Vents changed my life. It's helped me meet people that I never thought I'd ever have the chance to. Um, Artists that I'm big fans of, get to interview them now. Can say that can say I'm their friend. It's helped me on my own recovery journey. Um, I disclosed my mental health for the first time on it. It's still the most read article on Vent. And then I disclosed my sexual abuse for the first time. That was 4 years ago. I was probably one of the first over the parapet, shall we say? Not the first. I definitely wasn't the first, but I was certainly one of the first men to talk about it, and
Mm,
that helped me a lot, and allowed me to take ownership of it and find the right tools to heal from it. I'm certainly not 100% of the way yet, but uh, I wouldn't be where I am today without Vent and podcasts and everything that I've achieved for sure.
mm. It's an
And
incredible
yeah,
achievement.
thank
Go
you,
on.
man. Yeah, I was just gonna say, it's I think in the last couple of years, as I've gotten a bit older, I think I've felt my responsibility as someone who's recovered quite a lot, and also as a lad in this space who's been in it for a long time to help the young lads coming up now, and try and be a positive role model for them.
Mm.
I don't know if I am or not. I don't get enough feedback to know if I am.
Well, take it
Yeah,
from me, you're modeling something that's that that younger lads need to see
I hope so, man. Yeah.
just
Uh,
just by doing what you're doing.
yeah.
You are.
I think a lot of the lads are under a lot of pressure right now in a way that I probably wasn't. And I think
Mm,
people ask me like, what would you, how would you have dealt with, your issues back now the versus back then? And I said, oh, I've said openly, like if I was living through this school time right now, I was getting bullied on 7 different social media platforms versus one, I wouldn't have survived. There's no way I would have. If I was get I only got bullied on Facebook, and at least I could close my family computer after that. If I was getting bullied on WhatsApp and Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and Snapchat, and like it would have just felt it would I'd have gone.
mm.
And that 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 thought alone scares me enough to try and be a positive role model for the younger lads, because they're feeling more pressure than ever before now, which is really sad.
It really, really alarms me thinking about the young lads.
Mm,
It, I, yeah, I, I, I get confused about what to do. Because I've got, I've got kids and I've got a son, and um, it's, it, yeah, I don't really want to share too much about it, but just to say that
that's fine, mate.
I'm looking at mainstream. I'm looking at local authority provision for kids who have, struggle a bit
Mm-hmm.
with mainstream, and I'm just seeing a broken,
Mm,
everything's fucked,
mm,
and everyone's playing games. So local
yeah.
authority is trying to fuck me over and fuck the school over. School's
Mm,
trying to play the game, and it's all just a sort of like arse covering operation, really.
yeah.
I
And
mean,
then
there's good
yeah.
people in that,
Yeah.
but it's like anywhere. There's good people in family court, but the overall product of family court is shit.
Yeah. That's a whole other podcast, mate, isn't it? But
And I
those
just,
yeah.
go on,
I
sorry.
was just gonna say those are the things I try and cover at the moment, man. Like,
Right.
a lot of so a lot of lads with ADHD, especially working
Yeah.
class lads, were lost in the system when I was growing up. I mean, my
No, yeah.
yeah,
They're,
my autism flags never got flagged. I'm 90% sure I've got it. I don't want to try to get a proper diagnosis before I say I do.
Are you having an
Uh,
assessment?
yeah, I'm trying to. I'm trying to get it around July time because my
Great.
work can cover some of the costs
Oh
through health
wow.
insurance. So yeah, if it won't
Great.
cover all of it, but it'll cover enough for me to
How much does
only.
that cost, by the way?
Oh, screening could cost anywhere between 600 to 1900, so it depends on who you can find.
Yeah,
So
that's
if I can
yeah,
pay you like between 600 to 900, I'm pretty happy with that.
yeah.
I'm a pretty impatient person, which I'm also told is an autism
I
trait.
can relate to that.
So
I've been thinking for a couple of years myself, same thing. I was just really good at masking,
mm,
and it looks. I think people thought that I was just very chilled out, but actually not.
yeah, I always thought I was a bit different, but I always just sort of put it down to being a bit weird.
Yeah, being a
In
bit weird.
That's what I've always thought it was, and then went to my GP before Christmas, and I kind of just went to like on the off chance. I wasn't even kind of desiring a diagnosis, to be honest.
Mm,
I'd had an inkling maybe like 5 years ago because I've always been very unfiltered, and I've been able to develop some good filters, but I've never quite been able to like put a lid on it.
mm,
And I thought, oh, maybe on the off chance I'll just go and see. And she just asked me a few questions. I said yes to every single one of them. And she went, yeah, maybe you've got low to mild autism. So there we go.
mm.
Uh, so yeah, I'm trying to cover a lot of lads with ADHD at the moment. I'm trying to cover um lads who've been domestic abused. I'm quite proud of that. Actually, it's one of my proudest achievements. Lads who've been domestically abused, sexually abused, or detransitioned. Those episodes, I'm
That's
really
great
really proud. I'm
work.
really
Really
proud
great
of
work.
because those are a lot of the lads who aren't listened to in society, and when they
Mm.
are brave enough to disclose publicly, they get backlash.
Yeah,
And we both know
yeah.
that trust is massive for men in disclosure, far more. It needs to be a far higher level stereotypically than women, because women stereotypically are more emotionally intelligent and able to disclose deeper emotional issues on a basic level around their mates. Like lads, we need a couple of beers normally at the end of the night before we start having the deep convos, and sometimes that's almost makes it more special in a way. But that's something that's kind of like how we're wired, I guess. But when these lads do disclose, a lot of the time they, like I said, get backlash, and if they get backlash, they may never disclose again. So
Yeah,
that's
so
kind of like one of my proudest achievements, I would say.
you're really speaking to the myth that, men just need to open up more. No,
Oh,
there's no problem with men opening up as long as you give them the right space. But
yes, and
if you
trust.
just, yeah, if you don't give if you don't give them the right space and trust, they're not stupid.
Nope.
They're not going to do it.
They'll think it's not worth the
It's not
risk.
worth it.
That's what lads will think.
Mm.
I speak to them all the time.
And also the other end of the spectrum, if you're a husband and father and you've got three kids and a massive mortgage, and everyone's, no one really wants you to come home one day and say, "Oh, do you know what? Can't face it anymore. I don't know if I can do it anymore." And actually, I want to start unpacking 30 years of unprocessed emotion.
Mm,
They want a knight on top of a horse, looking strong, who can fucking
mm,
keep
mm.
doing. So
Yeah,
I think the problem is it's on everyone, isn't it?
yeah, definitely. And I've been really blessed in having great therapists in my time, and the people that I have disclosed to have always given me a positive reaction.
Mm.
So I'm almost privileged in that sense. I can very rarely think of an instance where my mental health disclosure has been received negatively. I'm actually
Well,
struggling to think of one. So
I
um,
admire your balls in just going, fuck it, I'm gonna do this platform and then I'm gonna do a podcast on. It was like I didn't get all the way through it. It was like granular detail
because the
of
Lord of
like
the Rings film, mate. I don't blame
all
you.
the
That one.
it was so big, so long, but it was like all
Uh,
these incidents through through each year of your childhood, and I was like, but that is, yeah, that's part of the process.
yeah.
Yeah.
That wasn't even all of it, to be fair. That's the scary thing about it. That was just all the things that I could remember. There was definitely other stuff that I didn't disclose or felt
It is.
too
I
even
mean,
too ashamed to disclose them.
right.
Um,
It's
yeah,
it's frightening, isn't it? What children who are really unhappy, they're essentially locked in to a prison, a daily prison
that's how
where
it felt.
they,
Yeah,
yeah, there's no way out because they don't have control over their own lives and they don't have any other options. So what you did was really healthy and adaptive behavior. You
I wouldn't call it healthy because I had
it
to
was
unlock
it
a lot of it for a long time. I have to lock a lot of it afterwards, but it was the best way for me to survive, mate.
yeah, in
I had
that
to really, yeah,
situation
in that situation, I had to relinquish that protector through therapy because I just created that protector who protected me, and then I didn't
exactly.
need him anymore, but I was still being affected by it. That's the thing. I needed to let him go and heal that inner child, which I did through EMDR, and the EMDR changed my life in many ways. I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you the way I am without the EMDR, 100%.
What was your experience of EMDR?
Oh, just
That's
life
eye
changing,
movement
bro. Yes.
desensitization reprogramming.
Yeah,
So it's a
life changing,
specific.
man.
It's
Just
it's a neurological fast tracked therapy.
yes. So
Uh,
for the layman, you first of all create, I call it like in Happy Gilmore, your happy place. So you create a memory that is happy for you and is blissful. And I created that before the start of every session. And then I did, the listeners can't see, but I did two butterfly hands over my chest and tapped them and closed my eyes as I remember the happy memory. That got me into a nice serene space. And then I picked a negative trauma. So it could be sexual abuse or a scar related to the sexual abuse. It could be suicide. It could be my body image when I was
at uni.
cyberbullied,
Uh,
or body image at uni. It could be
yeah.
self harm, which I did two very intense sessions on. It could be relationships with my parents that I had that I reconciled and have reconciled with. And you create a negative cognition associated with it, fix on that.
Just say what does
Sorry.
cognition
Oh,
mean to the
cognition means will
layman?
be like I everyone hates me. I'm unlovable. Something like that, which is
The
bad.
story. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. And then I did this on Zoom, which is quite bonkers actually, but it worked for me because it was during COVID. And I sat there and I moved my eyes from side to side like that, and just flicked them like a what do you call it? Like a pen, like those. What are those? What's that pendulum thing? I can't never don't know what it's called. The
The
cradle,
pendulum.
like that cradle thing where the two balls hit each other.
Oh yeah, I don't
Yeah,
know what
that
that's
thing. That's
called.
the only thing
From the
I can't
80s.
remember. Yeah, yeah, that's the only analogy I can use to describe it. And I just flicked my eyes from side to side, and then the therapist would say stop, and then you take a breath, feel what's in your
Yeah.
body, and then you do it again. And as you do that, your brain starts to heal itself, and you create a positive cognition by the end of the session or by the end of the second or third session. So yeah, but I had bonkers stuff happening in my head, man. I had spoke with previous versions of myself, gave my 8-year-old me a hug and multiple times and cried with him, and sat in a room in an imaginary room in my head in my university halls with three different versions of myself sat down in a chair like group therapy and talking to all of them. Yeah, it's like being on LSD.
Fantastic.
And that's the way I healed.
How many
Yeah.
EMDR sessions did you have?
Oh, a lot, man. So the first round that I did it for about 6 months, and it was once a week.
Mm.
That was quite intense. But I'm glad I did that. And then I was looking to buy my flat, which I live in now. So I just called it off with my therapist at the time. And then I didn't hear from her for about 4 months. And I was like, that's a bit weird. Because I wanted to start it off again. And then
You wanted
sorry, go on.
why were you expecting her to contact you out of
As
interest?
in,
Was
I
that
was
the
contacting her to say, oh, let's kick it up again. But I wasn't
but she
getting a
just
response.
all right,
Yeah.
got it. Yeah.
And then I messaged my previous CBT therapist who had connected me with her, and she said, "Oh, X has died." And I was like, "Oh, wow." I thought it was like COVID
Right.
or something. I was obviously upset, but I wasn't like completely in bits. I was just kind of really upset that she had died, and wanted to figure out what had happened. And then I got a bit like, "Oh, why can't I find out?" And then I Googled her name and I found out she had taken her own life, which was really, really sad. And I contacted
Mm.
my previous therapist to be like, I've just found out. And she was like, yeah, I didn't want to tell you because I wanted to protect you and didn't want you to find out like that from me. And that was really, really sad. And then I sort of grieved for her for about a week, maybe a week and a half. And then I found a new therapist and I did about 4 months with her, maybe five. I can't really remember from the top of my head. And that was once every 2 weeks. And that kind of finished it off, I would say. And then I did another round of CBT with my previous CBT therapist. And I finished that May last year. And then I'm obviously in this support group now.
Mm. And how are you finding group work?
Really helpful, man.
Yeah,
Uh,
great, isn't
I
it?
yeah, I was very skeptical of it. I was always very like I kind of did want my own space when talking about mental
Yeah.
health disclosure. But I had a breakdown in December last year in 2023, that was related to the sexual abuse and a scar that I thought I'd healed from. But had basically come back telling me that I didn't deserve to be loved, and it's affected me a lot with relationships. I've never had a long-term relationship, probably for that reason, related to the abuse and also the autism, I think, which is I'm very resistant to change. So probably those two interacting with each other probably didn't help. But yeah, I was like, would this be solved with more therapy? I don't think so. I think it would probably be going over old ground, and luckily I was able to, through my contacts from Vent, speak to a podcast guest who runs a survivors charity, and he allowed me to join their group therapy group with other lads, all different ages, different sexualities, gay and straight or bi, and that's been really helpful just to have a space to release all of the dark thoughts in my head because doing Vent has changed my life in many ways, but the I guess for the responsibility that I have, and a lot of people rely on me. A lot of these dark thoughts and scars from the sexual abuse, I've not really wanted to burden anyone with them. It's quite hard for people to hear, and I guess it had kind of almost been like reverse stigmatization, where before I started Venom and I was having breakdowns in university, I thought I was burdening people by talking about it and talking to them about it. Obviously, realized that was wrong, and I was right to go to them. But
Mm.
now it got to the plot point where I was like, I don't want to burden someone with all these sexual abuse scars, and it's really heavy, and most people don't actually know how to handle it either. My circle of trust has gone quite down. There's very few people I really talk to when I need to now. So just having that space to let every all of this out and just lads to be like, yeah, I get it, mate. It's just as simple as that. It's
Fantastic.
just yeah, it was just so good for me. So I'm gonna use it until I no longer need it. I don't know when
Yeah.
that will be. It's once every 2 weeks, so it's really
Some
helping
people
me so far.
some people stay in groups for years and it's a really rich experience
Yeah,
because life happens to everyone and you get to witness the other men and
yeah.
their struggles. And there's a saying from a band of brothers, which is a
Oh, one of my favorite TV
uh,
shows ever. Mm.
no, well, yeah, that is good, but a band of brothers is also a male mentoring charity in
Oh,
England.
okay, brilliant,
And it mentors lads from 18 to 25 who have been in prison or been homeless or
amazing.
have been in some kind of crisis. But also older men are in it and they're the mentors. And
Positive role models, isn't it? That's what we
yeah,
need.
and there's this is all over England and there's weekly men's circles. And anyway, one of the sayings there is, you know, if um if a man does his work in the circle, you know, shares something painful, then he's doing the work for other men. You know, men in the circle who that resonates with, they get healed as well
Mm,
because it's a shared experience.
yeah,
And
that's really
it
powerful. Yeah,
yeah.
and
Have you
yeah.
experienced that kind of thing? Like when you
Yeah,
watch
in the
someone
groups,
else?
yeah,
Yeah,
man. Yeah, that they've helped me. I like to think I've helped some of the boys in it. I think that plays into my mantra of, you know, let's avoid the one size fits all approach to men's mental health. A lot of men will be helped by therapy. It was life changing for me. I know a lot of men won't be helped by it. It might even make them worse.
100%.
And some men will be helped by talking. some men won't be, but some men might see other men talking and be helped by it, even though they have no intention or will be helped by talking themselves. And that's the
Totally.
kind of approach I take.
Yeah. Because I think back to my first encounter with therapy, I got told by the GP, "Oh, you're clinically depressed. You're you're very depressed." And I had no idea at the time. I just thought, "Oh, I had all these uh, whatever, all sorts of they're called cognitive impairments, thinking errors." I had why the reason that that first experience was so profound to me is because I saw the list of thinking errors and I was like, yes, 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 I've got all of them. And I just thought that was me being shit. But it was like, oh no, it's actually just a normal biological response to chronic stress. Like when you felt stressed for so long that everything starts breaking down. And that I think that's what got me out of that hole was just that the normalization of like, oh yeah, it's not so it's different for everyone, isn't it? Sometimes
Mm.
it's very quick. I've seen that in a lot of my clients. They just go, "Oh right," and then they're good. I mean, it's not that simple, but it can happen very quickly.
Mm.
Um, yeah. So see, we're coming up on the hour. Really good to see you, Freddie.
And you, mate.
Um, yeah, I hope your sleep gets sorted. Sleep's the foundation of everything.
Yes. Yeah.
It's so good getting some good sleep.
Yeah. I think it will. It's just a couple of changes that I need to make and maybe invest some more time and make some positive changes, reduce my screen time, keep my phone other side of the room, and maybe invest in a sleep mask and stuff like that. Just keep my room a bit colder. Nothing
That's
too strenuous, but if I don't have good sleep, I'm fucked the next day. Like I need like
yeah,
8 hours sleep.
yeah.
So
Get that.
yeah, I think I'll be fine. I've gone through far worse in the last year and a half, multiple breakdowns and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, I think I'll be okay. I know I'll be okay.
Mm, it's good to hear. I think that's one thing that happens to us as we learn to feel more, we can tolerate more feeling. We become more aware of how fucked we do feel if we don't sleep well. Whereas, looking just speaking personally, looking back into earlier times in my life, I just had no insight whatsoever. Just feeling really bad a lot of the
Yeah.
time and just going, maybe I should like smoke a spliff or something to feel better.
Yeah, I can't speak to that for obvious
Yeah,
reasons.
yeah, fair dinks. Listen, yeah, thanks for coming on and keep up the fantastic work, making a real impact.
Thank you very much,
So
man.
bless you for that.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for having me on. I've loved it.